Try to look like half.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Crash and Thunders. Crash can't be here today, but I'm Thunders, and I'm here with the legendary Trev Pattenden from the NWOBHM band Prowler, bass and vocals. How are you, man?
I'm good. Really glad to be here. Really good to be here, and thanks for the invite. And love the hat. Love the hat. I think I've mentioned that before. That's great. I mean, you look like a DC character. If you ain't, you should be. You know what I mean? So
well, I take that as a compliment.
Yeah,
I've been told I'm like a human cartoon character at times. So
they mean it. They mean it in a good way. Yeah. So I speak with a very thick London accent sometimes because I'm from the same neck of the woods as Steve Harris and all those guys.
Yeah, I could tell the different dialects. You know, even the difference between you and Thunderstick a couple weeks ago. It's great.
If
you don't have a Cockney one, that would be a difficult interview then.
Proper Cockney one. Yeah, I can do that. That's where I'm from. Yeah, but then we start talking in slang, you know.
Yeah.
And then no one, and they developed all of that. With my uncle, when I was a boy, we've got a lot of street markets in the East End, and one of my uncles had a stand there. So you learn all of that stuff, you know. And it was the stall holders that used to make this slang up, so the police couldn't understand what they were talking about.
That's cool as shit. It's almost like what we call pig Latin over here.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like the boys from the hood, you know. It's brothers from the hood, you know.
So take us back to the beginning. Obviously, the band started.
My mother and father got together in a caravan in Wales, and that's where it started. Yeah,
nice.
Apparently, that's where. You want not that far back? Okay, so.
Well, really, what set off the spark that made you want to join a heavy rock band? I guess they would have called it at the
time. Well, to be honest, it was. To begin with, we just wanted to get out and play music. You know, I grew up listening to a lot of the British blues guys. You know, in the late '60s, people like Alexis Corner, Peter Green. You know,
I was just about to drop Peter Green because that's usually yeah.
My brother actually knew Peter quite well. He lived
in the
same street. Yeah, he used to walk past in Sailor and. Sadly left us was it last year, I think?
Yeah.
So I grew up listening to that, you know, under the covers of my bed, you know, with the little
transistor radio.
Listening to Luxembourg or Radio Caroline.
It's funny because any Beatles interview, they mention that too. It's like any English in the 60s and 70s, they were listening to their transistor radios on pirated radio stations.
And we all did it. They all did it because it was really it was those radio stations that really gave you that really cool music. Yeah. You know, because the BBC was playing all the commercial shit and I wasn't never into that, you know. Yeah. But we were a musical home. And it was Beatles and Rolling Stones, you know, we liked them all. Yeah. My mother was actually a singer who used to go up to she used to bunk off my grandfather used to tell her, you've got to go and get a job, you know, but she said, you know.
Oh, so I can see where it's in your DNA at this point.
Yeah, well, she did. And she used to go up to the open mic sessions up at Ronnie Scott's in West London. Nice. And she became a bit of a fixture there. So she had a good voice, my mum, you know. Played a bit of piano, so it was a very musical home that we lived in. I was brought up in. And then I started when I was 13, 14. Like I say, I used to listen to the British blues guys, you know, John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, people like that. And then it developed this harder edge around the early 70s with bands. But then you got the bands like Purple and. Sabbath and all those guys, and that's when it really got serious, and that's when I thought, I want some of this. You know?
That had to be just looking back on the time period and how much shifted from like 69 to say 71 musically. Yeah. That had to be weird going straight from the sunshine, hippy dippy, you know, flowers in your hair to this darkness.
Well, I don't think we. See, the UK isn't quite the west coast of America. Yeah. I lived in LA for 2 years, so I can actually vouch for that. You know, where I come from in Essex and London, it was like grey skies and a lot of rain, you know, kind of thing. So I don't think that whole West Coast hippie thing.
Well, even your psychedelia was a bit darker. Pink Floyd's first album was very
and it was
disturbing.
Yeah. I mean, the drug thing was there, obviously. You know, but it wasn't like, forget the West Coast of America. It wasn't like you know. But the flower power was there and the rest of it. But
it seems like a weird transition to me. Like the short time and the musical shift was just so quick. I guess maybe you didn't think about it at the time.
Yeah, we're a small country.
Yeah.
You know, the UK is a small country, and it doesn't take long for something to swirl around, you know. Whereas in the States, you know, the States, you've got California, which is its own country, and then you've got the East Coast. Yeah, what it is, you know.
Yeah.
And so the different types of music on the West Coast of the States, you know, San Francisco and all these places. It was kind of like a world unto itself that didn't really affect what was going on in New York, you know. That didn't come along until the punk thing happened. But in the UK was a much smaller country.
Yeah.
So effects of music, fads and genres gets moved around a lot quicker.
Gotcha.
I think. Yeah.
Okay. So that does help explain quite a bit.
That's what I think, and I don't care.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've always said, and I mean, I've been an Anglophile since I was a kid, you know, and finding out I've got English and German DNA and with some Native American. So it's really complicated, but I've always had because there's so much music, there's so much culture over there that America seems to trade for nationalism in comparison that I noticed even as a teenager. But like, you know, you guys just seem to, anything that, you know, may have come from here, you guys might pick it up and twist it and you guys perfect it, it seems. There's something about the English way of doing that. I don't know.
But it's always been backwards and forwards, you know.
Yeah. Rock and roll, the Beatles, the blues, the Stones, you know.
The blues guys I mentioned earlier, you know, they were picking up on what they were hearing that came from the original blues guys, like B.B. King, your Freddie Kings, you know, Albert King, Burger King. They were listening to all of those things.
Even Led Zeppelin were, and they took the blues beyond what anybody probably could have.
If you look at those early rock bands, Purple, all those bands,
it was all blues and jazz based
you'll find a strong blues influence in there, which is why somebody asked me on our Facebook the other day that some of your songs have got like a bit of a bluesy thing going on, and that's just the influences, you know? They'll always be there.
Well, yeah, it's like the roots of all rock and roll at the end of the day.
Yeah, of course it is, and it's and then everything sort of rolls on from that. When you look at what they call the new wave of British heavy metal, you only really had that one thing going on, you know, at the time, and they were bands just like ourselves that were going around the country.
Oh yeah.
And now you've got all those different splits that came from it: speed metal, death metal, thrash metal, you know.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. It all started with just the one type of music, and it's all going to evolve. That's just going to happen all the time.
Oh yeah. It's one reason why I've fallen so much in love over the last 10, 20 years with doom metal. It's basically Sabbath worship, essentially.
Yeah.
Heavy metal in that style of playing, which, you know, there's a whole genre for that. So, you know, that alone just shows you how it all does circle back.
And what will it be doing? What will it be doing in 10 years, in 20 years? Where will it be then? You know,
the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yes, the beauty.
So, was Prowler the first band that you were in or you started, or were there a few other, like, you know, in America we used to call them fuck bands, where just a bunch of teenagers would get together, not give a fuck?
That's kind of what it was before Prowler. That's kind of what it was. Yeah, I used to hang out with guys from college.
Okay.
And we used to go and sit in each other's houses, you know, and I'd learned to play an instrument a long time. Although I didn't play bass at the time, I just played six string. And we used to sit in each other's houses and just play the same fucking song, you know.
Yeah.
Which was usually Old Brown Shoe by the Beatles, you know. It was
wow, that's a deep cut for the Beatles. Really underrated cut for them too.
I love the song. But yeah, we used to do that, and then we kind of got at one point we looked around the room and there was like 20 people there.
Really? Wow.
And we had like 4 guitarists, 3 bass players, 2 drummers, and the tea lady. And yeah, and it was kind of like, well, we got, I looked at my brother who was there, John, and I said, we need to do something serious. And that's when we decided to try to put a proper band together.
Nice.
And we found, and we knew Martin anyway. He was close with the families, and there was a drummer at my brother's school. It was the same. It was the same guys in the same year. Depeche Mode were there. I think Depeche Mode were in the same classroom.
Wow.
So they all, we just said, okay, let's form a band, and that was it.
Very English, very nonchalant. That's what I love about it.
We just do it. We just do it.
Like that's just something I love, where like there's no big like dramatic thing. It's like, oh, shall we have a go at this?
Yeah, we did have a little situation, but we formed the band, but we formed it with a drummer, a guy called Steve, who had he was the only guy we knew who had a drum kit. So we said, great, and we went around and started practicing around his house. And I think it was the second rehearsal. We said to him, look, there might be some gigs we can get. He said, oh, I've got some news for you. He said, what's that? He said, I've actually joined the army.
Oh, shit.
So we thought, oh, that's nice, And then his old man stepped in to help us out for a while. And he was a big band drummer, very much used the brushes and the side stick, sort of, very Charlie Watts type of thing.
Nice.
That didn't work out. So that's when we got the other drummer in. So,
yeah, I don't see a Charlie Watts working out with you guys.
No, it wouldn't work. I don't think that would have worked so well,
No. So this is what, 74, 75?
We formed in 75, in the back end of 75, around in November, I think. And then by 76, we were gigging.
All right.
I think one of the record companies got it wrong that said we formed in 76, but we didn't. We started performing in 76.
Yeah.
And from then on, we started, the first sort of gigs we were doing were clubs, working men's clubs and that kind of thing, usual sketch.
So pretty much the same circuit that Maiden at the time would have been starting out.
Yeah.
You know, just to put it in context for,
Yeah. You play anywhere. So
that's
we were
wild. I can't imagine a time where you could just play like that in pubs and gentlemen's clubs and that.
Yeah.
It's not quite like that today. You got to sell 200 tickets first.
Well, there's always going to be the bottom line, I can understand that, but yeah, it was different then. It was different. Yeah. It was a lot easier.
So yeah, what other bands were up around you at the time? Were there any that many people wouldn't know? Like, what were some of your competitors, I guess you could say, in a way?
Yeah, we didn't. The funny thing was, I don't ever remember it as, even when we started to do the bigger gigs and stuff, I don't ever remember it being a really competitive type of thing. Everybody got on with everybody,
Okay, yeah.
Which was kind of nice, and you'd meet everybody on, you go to a gig and there'd be someone stood at the back and someone there. So everybody knew everybody, and your posters are all over the place. So Iron Maiden knew about us, we knew about Iron Maiden and the other bands, but there weren't too many bigger bands from that area, really.
Yeah, because this is the early days of that era too.
Very early days, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember very early back, there was a band called Iron Maiden in the same town that I came from.
I actually know that there is a progressive rock band that had the name, because I remember being a Maiden fan and Anglophile, and what's this Iron Maiden album from 70? And I saw someone left a review, because this is before you could download stuff, and they were like, it's not the Iron Maiden you think, but it's still really damn good. So I always thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's and the whole question of the names of bands as well was, that kind of goes back to that, because I had to have a sit down with Paul Di'Anno and Steve Harris about the Prowler thing, because they.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, seriously. They came and played at our equivalent of the Cart and Horses, and I walked in quite late And I'd seen the name and I thought, well, I'm going to go and check them out. You know, there'd
Yeah.
been a few write-ups and whatever. And as I walked in, I walked over and bought myself a drink, and the band had just finished. And so I asked, there was a guy there at the bar I knew, one of the local fans, you know. And I said, how's the band? And he said, yeah, great. He said, but the singer's been spouting off on the mic about you, about Prowler. And I said, oh, really? I said, well, where is he? You know, need to go and have a quiet word in his ear, you know. And he said, oh, he's in the office. Well, the office was the toilets. That was the John, you know, that was the,
yeah.
So I walked over there, you know, getting ready for a bit of a rumble, and I walk in, and Paul was had just finished having a slash, which is a Cockney expression for having a piss, you know.
Okay.
Can I say that? Can I say that word? Yeah.
So yep, you're uncensored.
Okay. Oh, in that case.
Yeah. You can say whatever you like.
I walked. I just did what I always did in those situations, and I walked straight over to him and I stopped my face about 10 inches from Paul's, and I just said, "What the fuck's going on?"
Yeah.
What's going on? And he's like, "Oh," and I said, "This guy out there telling me that you've been spouting off about Prowler on the mic." And the worst thing about it was there was 15 people in the venue.
Oh,
that's
geez.
it. Yeah, seriously, there was 15 people, maybe 16 on there. But hardly anybody there, you know.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. Oh, and I said, well, listen. I said, I'll prove this in a minute. I said, we formed in '75, and I'll bet you the next 10 years fucking wages, you didn't write that song in '75. And he went, oh no, I think Steve wrote it in '77 or something like that.
Yeah.
Then it was the track Prowler, you know.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay. And he was, to be honest, he was lovely. He was really nice.
Yeah.
He was very conciliatory, and we ended up just slapping each other and talking. And he told me what they were. I think they'd either just signed to EMI at the time, or they were about to.
Okay.
And then they were supposed to be going on some tour with Priest or Kiss or something like that.
Yeah, it was. I think their first big tour was actually opening for Kiss. I know they did play with Priest over in the States a lot.
It was a European tour,
yeah. Yeah, and in the States, I know they opened for Priest a lot, and I know the Priest camp have a lot to say about being there too. It's funny how some of these fights and some of these old things from like 30 years ago, they're still bitter. Some of them are.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, he was really polite and nice to me, and we just chatted about this. And then he had to go outside to the van. Well, I think it was the Green Goddess they called it, and he had to go. He had to go outside for a couple. So I went back out, and I took my pint and went and put my money. The rest of the band were paying Paul.
Yeah.
So I just went and I put my money on that, and we just started talking, and I explained to Steve what had gone on, and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry about that. No problem."
Yeah.
So we'll remember that one. But and then after that, I saw Paul a couple of times. But I think what you got to remember is that they were, they were just another band at the time.
Yeah, they weren't.
They weren't the juggernaut that they are now.
Yeah, and with Barry or Thunderstick, when I interviewed him, I made the statement after a few things he had mentioned: history is rewritten by the winners, and that's the same in rock and roll. Because like there's so many documentaries that make it out like Maiden was like the only special thing in the scene at the time, and everything else revolved around them.
They were good. I mean, I stayed for the second set. And I the one thing, talking with Steve before that, and then watching them play, you just knew that you could see the focus there,
Yeah.
They really were, and it was, you were talking, when you spoke to him, you were talking to someone who he knew where he was going,
Yeah. Well, that's always good, but
even though,
I don't know. It just seems like they're put up on a pedestal when in the time frame they were just another band.
Well, but everybody was.
Yeah.
Purple were at one time.
Oh yeah.
Everyone
I saw them recently. They're still killer.
Yeah.
I saw them in 2018 with Priest, actually. So that was a good tour. Ian Gillan's still giving it. It's amazing.
Yeah, but he won't sing Child in Time.
No, well, in all fairness, he probably can't.
He can't sing.
Yeah,
I mean,
I got to give credit where credit's due, where you could straight up admit this is out of my range at 70 something years old. Fair enough, dude.
And he says that.
Yeah, he's honest about it. That's what I appreciate about it, you know. So you guys obviously, like, you know, 75 you form, 76 you're playing gigs. Was there any demos being recorded, any record label interest? And I've got to ask this as part of the NWOBHM, was punk an enemy for you, or did it help give metal the kick up the gas?
I think punk helped because it was because punk was in your face.
Yeah.
You know, through those years, 76, 77, 78. Punk
it was
really
raw, and it was bitter, and it was street.
It was everywhere. It was everywhere. But I think part of it was you had this complete alternative music thing going on, which was bands like ourselves and right across the country.
Yeah.
They were just out there playing their own, you know, their own songs, their own brand of heavy rock, you know.
Yeah.
And eventually the record company started to take notice of that. And that's when you started to see bands like Samson get signed. And that's kind of where it began with that.
I think Steve or Dave Murray even said they were offered a record deal in like 76 or 77 if they shaped their heads into mohawks. And they said no. You know?
Well, Diano was from a punk band.
Oh, yeah. I've always said that. I don't know why Steve tries to downplay the punk influence on the first two Maiden records.
No, I mean, no, they got their own view of themselves, you know.
Yeah, but
I think there was a very, very strong. There had to be a very strong punk element to the whole early new wave of British heavy metal. You know, there really was. I think it was a very urban element to it. If you look on the back of Brute Force, okay, look at Fist are there, Raven are there, and we're there, and a few others there. If you look at the way they're dressing, the photographs, the promo photos, they're all done on old building sites. Yeah, it's all very urban. There's no Raven then don't look anything like Raven look now.
Yeah, that is true.
That's the giveaway. That's the giveaway. There was this very strong urban punk element to what was going on, and I think it was mainly through the music. Yeah, the music was quite fast and frantic and really aggressive, and the vocals weren't, they weren't, the three tenors, they weren't Freddie Mercury. It was real
snarling, ugly, angry.
There was passionate. There's loads of angst, That was a lot of what was going on. So the early influences and the early parameters, if you like, were from punk.
Yeah.
It kind of just flowed into one another in some ways.
Oh yeah, and it's pretty easy to do that. Like, it's funny because there's even people from back then, like, Neil Kay's infamous for totally dismissing punk as a genre altogether. Whereas a lot of the other people, like, Thunderstick as well, they liked punk. They liked what it did.
Yeah, and I was a huge fan of, some of the music was shit. I'll be
absolutely.
Honest. But some of it was great. I was a huge fan of The Clash. I liked, they wrote some great songs,
Oh yeah, Complete Control is one of my favorites of all time.
They were a rock band, man. They weren't punk. They may have come out of that. It gave them the opportunity to be sort of anarchic, but they...
Well, I feel the same way about the Sex Pistols. They were a rock and roll band
they were rock.
More than anything.
Yeah, all the rock, all the riffs. All
the first Damned record.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the Stranglers, great band.
Sham 69 I like too. Yeah. Orbital Breakout and shit. Yeah.
That's it.
We're
all going down the pub.
Yeah. I just had to ask that because there is that, there's some who are in favor of it, some who weren't. So, I was just curious where you stood on that line.
I think you could be narrow-minded and very protective and insular about your music. But I think anybody who is a student of music in general will always accept and identify and recognize the influences and the connections. because they're there whether you like to admit it or not, you know. And if you say,
whether you're conscious
you know,
of it or not.
I only want to listen to this, or I only want to listen, fine, that's your choice.
Yeah.
You know, but it's to say that you're right or they're right or what, yeah, I don't get it.
Me neither.
It's all music, man. You know, it's like,
just we call those people who are like, oh no, you can't like that if you're into this. Like, those are gatekeepers. I like to break the gates open, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think if you're a musician, you kind of have that view of life anyway.
Yeah.
You're trying to break barriers down. You're trying to do this all the time. You're trying to, because I mean, when I started, I knew one thing. I never wanted to be someone that was going to play other people's music. I never wanted that.
Absolutely.
You know, and I've got friends that play in cover bands and they do this, or I've got friends who are the best demo guys. They're the best session players in the world, teachers, demonstration at the NAMM get together or whatever. And I never wanted to do that. All I ever wanted to do was get out and play my own songs.
Absolutely.
And to be one of those bands, you know, to be one of those bands in the chart or wherever, and get that recognition, you know. And
absolutely, I feel you. I would hate to be a ghost. You know what I mean?
It's a sheep. It's a sheeple.
Yeah.
I never wanted to be a sheeple.
So were there any demos that were recorded around that time? Because I know you guys were put out on Brute Force and maybe a few other compilations.
Yeah, we were offered a lot of compilations. We turned one big one down with a company called Heavy Metal Records.
I know about them. I'm a Witchfinder General fan, and Rocky Shades from Rothschild UK is a good friend, so I know all about that.
Well, we went up to see Paul, his invitation, Paul Birch, whose company it was, and he offered us 6 slots on their debut album. But because we'd been in the studio with Chris Sangarides recording for the Bronze demos. When we told him that they'd offered us this, he said, no. He said, don't. This is gonna come out as a single. So we never accepted it. Before then, we did record. We did demos and stuff like that, and we did record a couple of tracks for a single. I think it was 77. We did it, I think. But we never got into that idea of putting out a single.
Gotcha.
Ourselves. We never bought that. Well, I think we were quite sort of smart from day one, because we knew it was easy to make a single, a vinyl, you know, and it's easy to do it now. It's not expensive. No. The problem is that you get 500 of those things made. What are you going to do with them? You're going to sell a few at a gig. You're going to give one to your auntie Mimi. You're going to give some to your friends, some to your mates, because your mates aren't going to want to buy them because they know you. So you're going to get stuck with like 300 of these things in a box underneath the stairs.
Yeah.
Because you can't distribute them, and that's the key.
That is true. You have a very good point. You can't really distribute much if you're on that level.
Yeah. And I remember my contemporaries, peers, at the time when I started speaking to other bands, saying, if you want to be a real band, then you've got to get a recording contract. That's when you become a real band. So that kind of became the Ark of the Covenant type of thing.
The goal.
Yeah, the Holy Grail. And
I was
because if you do that, if you get the deal, then everything else comes after that. You know, all the gigs come in, the radio airplay comes in the charts. That all happens because, and in our case with Brute Force, MCA was probably the biggest record company on the planet at the time. You know, they had some great acts on there, including Skinner, who were their flagship band. So all of a sudden we're getting national airplay, we're doing national TV, and we only had the one track at that time. So the proof of that came back, and it was like, yeah, you're right. You know, if you get that, that's what will happen. So we never got into the idea of doing our own singles. We just, if anyone at the gigs wanted to buy it, any of the music, we had our own studio by end of 78, we had our own studio. So we would just produce cassettes.
Oh, nice. Okay.
we'd sell them at the gigs. Yeah. So there's about half a dozen of these cassettes out there somewhere that will probably be quite collectible. You know.
Yeah.
And some of them are live as well, which is quite interesting.
Oh wow, that's cool. If I ever see one, I'll have to get a hold of it. Then just be like, do you know what I'm listening to?
We've got a couple of them, but we keep them under lock and key. So yeah,
nice.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day.
That would be neat. So we're at about 1980 now, right?
79, we got a new drummer. We got a guy called Colin Smith.
Okay.
And we started to really go for the attack the London venue circuit a lot more intensely. Because really London then was still the center of the record industry.
It's like New York City here or LA, you know, London's here central for everything.
Yeah. So all the bands, although the bands that were recording with Neat Records, they would all be coming down to do these showcase gigs, because that's where you could get the A&R men to come along and see you, you know. So your Metal for Mothers gig, you know, which I think was Angel Witch, Iron Maiden, and Samson, I think it was. Yeah. That was organized for the benefit of the record company, you know. And it was there, I think, that Barton coined the phrase "new wave of British heavy metal." I think that was 1979.
Sounds magazine, yeah.
The Sounds, which was actually a newspaper. It wasn't a magazine.
Yeah,
it was a proper newspaper, you know. But so the bands would come down to London to set up their, you know, their showcase gigs, and so London was where it was happening. Well, that was easy for us because we lived 30 minutes outside London.
Yeah.
So we could get in and we could play all these great venues, you know, like the Royal Standard and the Ruskin Arms and places like that, and the Marquee Club and the Bridge House, Canning Town. And
Cart and Horses type thing too.
No, we never played the Cart and Horses.
Really?
It was actually,
oh, wow.
You know, it was a tiny little pub.
Oh, okay.
Really wasn't very big.
Gotcha.
But obviously that's the real home gig of Iron Maiden. It wasn't the Ruskin. They played the Ruskin for a couple of times, I think.
I think it's because when they put out that DVD a few years ago, and the whole history of them and Ruskin is because of that live show they found on tape, which is great. It's great to see them in that kind of form.
Yeah.
Definitely a different time. You know, it's like when you watch that footage, you can almost smell the room. You know what I mean?
It was a big, echoey place, the Ruskin. The stage was quite high. And it was all hard floors, all hard polished floors, you know.
Oh wow!
With a big open space. Well, it didn't. That's the problem.
Oh man, too much echo.
Like, oh no, it was. You really had to really overdo it with the PA system and just blitz everything, which is what most bands did. So I don't think the sound was actually that good at times with some bands, but it was always a good place, nice place to play. But it wasn't my favorite place, I got to admit.
Is it still there, or has it changed into something new?
The building is still, I think the building is still there, but I think as a venue, I think it's stopped now. Yeah, which is a shame.
Yeah. I think the Cart and Horses still has something going, doesn't it?
Yeah, probably. I mean, some of those pubs, they just won't change, you know.
Yeah, which is kind of nice in a way, you know.
Yeah, but it was part of a time when the whole music environment was so much healthier, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was very fertile. That's the word I use. It's very fertile.
Yeah, that's a shame with all this now, is that yes, anybody can make a record, but that also gives you more competition, and you know, you're competing against so much more, it seems, nowadays than
yeah. I think the other thing that has suffered because of it is the general sort of quality. Because
Agreed.
I think so, because not all of those bands are going in there with a world-class producer.
Yeah.
You know, they're not recording in the greatest of studios. You know, the studios are good and it's digital, so the quality is going to be good, you know, but to get a really good production, you need someone special there.
Yeah, you need someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. You know? Which is why when we met Chris Sangarides in 1980,
and he's a legend.
to work with him. Yeah, he was. And
he's
even
done
then,
a lot of great records. I mean,
yeah.
He's the one who did Painkiller, right?
He did. Yeah, he got the Grammy nomination for that.
Yeah. So just to put some perspective in that, 10 years before he did Painkiller, he was working with you guys. That's crazy.
Yeah, and the year before us, he did Gary Moore's first album.
Oh, wow.
Pain, Parisian Walkways, which I've got a copy of that on my wall, actually, that Chris signed.
Nice.
So, yeah, by 1980, he had a bit of space in his time. So we were lucky enough to work with him at the same time he was working with Girls' School, a band called Girls' School.
Yeah, they're great, too.
But then, because of the Gary Moore album, he'd met Phil Lynott from Lizzie, and they asked him to do the next two albums. That's why he ended up doing, I think it was Renegade and Black Rose, the last two albums.
Really good albums too.
Yeah, and then he got asked, and then he did the work with Yngwie Malmsteen, and it was endless. Yeah.
So he just got really busy, really quick.
Busy. Yeah. And he knew that. And he said, "Listen, guys, keep recording, and it was him that suggested that we record the live shows. So we started doing that. We started the first couple were pretty horrendous, but by the third one we got it worked out. And two of those live tracks are on the new album, so that'll be good.
I'm looking forward to hearing the album. I've been playing the single, A-side and B-side on the radio show. Like, I'll space it out. Monday I'll do Bad Child Running, and then
maybe you should do it in bits. Maybe you should do it in pieces or something.
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying not to slam these two songs down people's throats constantly.
No, don't. We don't want you to do that.
It is good stuff though, so I do put it on.
We want people to pick up on it because they like it, not because it's being. And I'm a firm believer that you don't need to. Oh no. You don't need to do the hard sell. If the music's right, it will do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the album, and you're working on number 2 right now, aren't you?
Yeah, we did a session yesterday. We worked on a track called Insane.
Nice.
Yeah, which is very close to the American Heart, I think.
Okay.
I won't tell you what it's about, but it's I actually love it. We did the final thing, so that'll go off. We'll have another listen to it and just tweak it.
Yeah.
For the little things that we need to do, and then we'll send that off to Abbey Road in London for mastering. So,
Nice. Abbey Road, man. What a studio.
Well, if you're gonna do it right.
It wasn't originally called Abbey Road, if I'm correct, right? Wasn't it EMI Studios or something like that?
It was EMI. It was always EMI Studios, I think.
But it became Abbey Road after the Beatles album.
I think after the Beatles put it on the map, I think they called it Abbey Road.
Yeah.
But
still,
why,
just to have, I mean,
that's gotta feel
great.
Who are the fucking Beatles? Who are they?
Who are they? It must be fucking great though to still all these years later have an album that's being mixed at such a prestigious studio. With so much history.
Well, the first album is a lot of the tracks are from 1980 and 1981 that were either mixed and mastered by Chris Sangarides or ourselves and our sound engineer Steve, and then there's a couple of tracks which were mixed and mastered by us and at Abbey Road. But for the second album, it's all going to be done there because it's all going to be new material.
Nice. Obviously, you're not changing style on us.
No.
Good.
There might be the odd country and western song thrown in there, but
Yeah, that's
maybe
maybe
a remake of a Dolly Parton thing.
Oh, you could always do Nancy Sinatra.
Maybe I'm taking the piss. Maybe not.
Yeah, that's the great thing. Nobody knows.
Yeah, I don't. To be honest, I don't think we could write anything else. We grew up.
Yeah.
We grew up as heavy rock kids, and I think we always will be. I mean, I'm 63 now. And it's like, fuck, where the years going? But
I'm about half that. I turned 30 on the 30th.
Yeah.
But since the age of 5, when I found Kiss, that's where my life had its purpose. So, I don't see it
I
changing.
think everybody can identify with some kind of music in their life, which is it shows you that's the importance of music, you know.
It chooses you. You don't choose it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably.
I'd say that. You know.
Probably. I think you might well be right there, Andy. I think you might well be right. Yeah.
So just to backtrack just a little bit, what broke up the band and what did you do in the
That's
time
going forward. That's going forward.
Well, we were just talking about the new albums.
We've gone from 1980 oh yeah, but we distracted. Why did we disband?
Yeah, like when did you disband? Did you disband technically?
Yeah, we
what did
did.
you do in between?
Yeah, we all left as mates, and we all just decided that. Well, I think it's the same thing that kind of led us to think about not making singles in the early days. We were very practical. You know, we were very realistic about what we were doing.
Yeah.
And I think we realized by 1982 that the whole, you know, the major record companies had pulled out from the whole new wave of British heavy metal thing. No one was doing anything. You know, the bands that had kicked on, they carried on, you know, and everyone went to the States, and Iron Maiden and Def Leppard and blah, blah, blah.
Tigers of Bang even.
Yeah.
Not to as much acclaim, but still, I think they did make it.
Them and Diamond Dead, I thought, were the two bands who I thought would really kick on, you know?
Yeah.
I really did. I really did think that I saw Diamond Dead. I knew the guitarist. I met him a couple of times, but I never met Diamond Dead at all, although they were on the album, on the Brute Force album. But they, I just thought they were the type of band with the right kind of music and the right image.
Yeah.
That they would go on. And of course, the Tigers were signed to MTA. So you would think naturally with a big record company behind them that they would do something. So I was surprised when they just sort of kind of dropped off the planet. And the same with Diamond Dead, you know.
Yeah, that's what's
the same with Tigers, you know.
Well, I think from everything I've been able to uncover, because I have to go through it through books and documentaries and stuff to really try to get an idea. Really, by 82, 83, a lot of the record labels were more focusing on the pretty boys that were coming out of LA.
Yeah, even before then. Yeah. In 81, you could see the shift. We did a TV program in 81 that I think is still out there on the web for a company for London Weekend Television, which was a major TV company. And we were on that program with Dr. Feelgood, a guy called Mickey Jupp, who was a very well-known performer, and Depeche Mode, and us. So it was like the Essex, you know, the Essex Mafia, you know. And, but the program was focusing on how everything was changing, even then in 81. And was. Yeah. So it was before 83, 82. By 81, the record companies had decided, okay, we've had enough of this. We've got the bands we want.
Where's the next hot town?
You know, LA.
Riot. Bing.
Iron Maiden went to, that was later though. Iron Maiden went to EMI. Def Leppard went to Phonogram, went to them.
Which they're a conundrum too. To even mention in NWOBHM, a lot of Americans will vomit, but they forget the first two records were really heavy.
Of who?
Def Leppard. Their image in America is a lot different than a lot of.
They were, but you can still hear you can still hear the influences, you know.
Oh yeah, they had a pop sensibility.
The glam rock. They had a big glam rock thing going on with them. They were big fans of Sweet and that kind of stuff. No, by 81, the record companies were now looking at the next big flavor of the month, which was the electropop, the Depeche Mode phenomenon, all that. That was 81. So by 82, 83, you had your bands. It went back over to mainly the west coast of the States, you know. And that whole, you know, the whole rock thing that started off there, you know, with bands like Poison, the Motley Crue, and Night Ranger.
Yeah, which is funny because the one thing
but everything got bigger. Everything got bigger.
Oh, everything and louder and brighter. And
but the albums, you know, they had different tech then. So the albums were trying to replicate the stadium gigs now that they were doing. So the production values were huge on these albums, you know, and now people were wearing jeans that strategically torn, you know, nice silk, there's all this kind of stuff. And then there was the big poodle haircut, you know. So I can remember going out and watching bands around 82, 83 in the UK, and suddenly everybody was looking like, Jesus, everyone was looking like John Bon Jovi, you know. And all the guitars were all different shapes now, and all the guitar breaks were all, you know, it was all this. So,
and like everything else, you had some good stuff, but you had a lot of shit too. Yeah, you know, just like every musical movement does.
Of course you will. Yeah.
You know,
but a lot of that West Coast stuff then really started to filter down into the UK. So it reversed itself.
It's kind of funny in a way though, because I was friends with a guy named Kel Hellraiser, which I'm sure you may know the name roughly. He was a writer over there and actually helped a lot of those bands in that era. He was good friends. I think he managed Poison. He was good friends with Tiger Tails and Stevie James, those guys. Rocky as well from Wrathchild. From what I understand, a lot of the American bands got a lot of their ideas from the UK glam bands that were starting up around the same time. Wrathchild actually predate Motley Crue, and a lot of people don't know this. It's interesting how the whole cross-pollination and the whole, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
and I remember seeing bands, English guys, going there, coming back with these beautiful haircuts, man. It was like, you know, getting in touch with the feminine side, you know what I mean? Whereas 10 years ago when we were doing it, we were just tramping around in old jeans and shirts because we couldn't afford it, you know?
Yeah.
Because
well, you guys also had Girl over there too in the late 70s, early 80s with Phil Lewis and...
I don't think they influenced much, to be honest. You know, they were
well, yeah, but they were considered part of the NWOBHM scene, but they were really a glam band.
That's why I don't. You can't. You know, you can't look at the new wave of British heavy metal and say that's where it started or that's where you can't. It's not possible. There's just too many influences. There's too much time goes by. You can't do it.
There's people who still fight to this day whether Judas Priest are considered NWOBHM or not.
Yeah, some guy today asking if I thought Motorhead were, and I had to sort of rethink it all, and it was like, well, okay, I knew they were going before, and by 77 or 78, certainly they were a big band, you know. Yeah, they were a big influential band. So that's not like Def Leppard. That's not like. It's not like Diamond Head. It's not like, you know.
You guys were all starting from ground zero.
Everyone was kind of starting from that point, So Motorhead were there before that. And of course, Lemmy was there before that with Hawkwind, you know. Yeah,
Hawkwind. And Lemmy's always said that Motorhead were just a rock and roll band. He wanted to do the English version of the MC5. And I think he pretty well did it.
Yeah. And I was a big MC5 fan. I loved them.
I love them too. I'm trying to get Wayne Kramer on here.
He's not in prison, is he?
No, he's been doing jails. He's got like a program where getting like prisoners guitars and shit like that.
Yeah, I read
really
that.
Good. He's one of those who wasn't a hypocrite who turned into a suburban yuppie. He really practices what he preaches.
Yeah, and that shows there's hope for all of us, you know.
Exactly. You know, not one of those like, you know, my mother who fought so hard for good causes, but then gave up and became the ultimate yuppie hypocrite. You know, you know, so, you know, what did you do then with Prowler done? Did you do anything musically in the time in between?
I took a couple of years off. I did some depping work with other bands just to keep playing, you know. Martin was in a band that went off touring Europe in Germany predominantly, and they made another Prowler single.
Nice.
Yeah, we ended up through the 80s. I did a lot of work on US air bases and that kind of stuff. You know, it was all fun kind of thing. You know, not
good pay, I'm sure.
Yeah, but not looking. Yeah, not looking for. not really particularly looking for anything, but I always believe if it's going to happen, it'll happen naturally. It'll be a natural evolution. It'd be nice to have another band that could go and do what we did with Prowler, but I never saw that coming. I never looked for it. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, we all as individuals, we just went off and did our own things. You know, ended up in different parts of the world and still playing music. You know, which is the important thing. You know?
So then, is that kind of what naturally brought you back together here recently?
We never really broke up as people.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's, physically, yes, but spiritually, no.
Gotcha.
And I think that shows that there was a very strong connection in the beginning, you know.
Well, the musicianship on the recordings and everything I've heard by you guys is so fucking tight and precise. It could cut you, you know, it could mow you down.
Yeah, you're listening.
Yeah, the
thing is, that's nice.
And you can't have that kind of tight musicianship without that, you know, cosmic kind of connection to your brothers there.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, because that's right. One of them was my brother, and we were very close still are. Martin was the same. He's like a brother, and we've known him since I was 6 years old. You know, it was only the drummers really that we seemed to change a lot. You know, and they didn't explode. You know, they just.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you ever see Spinal Tap and wonder? Because even Rob Halford thought that might have been a poke at
What you should be asking is how many times have you seen
it?
Yeah, but enough time. I could probably quote as many lines as you want.
How much of that actually does
D minor,
happen?
D minor. It's the saddest of all chords.
Oh, so what's this lovely piece of music called? This is called "Lick My Love Pump."
It's called "Lick My Love Pump."
How much of that shit actually happens? Like, how much of that is actually real in rock bands?
You know, I think a lot of it in its essence. Whether anything has particularly happened, I wouldn't know. But I was trying to think if there's anything that happened in that film that has ever happened to me, you know.
Yeah.
I'd have to write that down because I'm sure there's one or two things.
I mean, Dee Snider's talked about getting lost under the stage. When Aerosmith saw it, Steven thought it was awful and offensive, and Joe Perry thought it was fucking hysterical. Rob Halford thought it was great. You know, actually, Poison were called Paris. And when they saw the one drummer with the Poison shirt, they're like, we should change our name to that. So that movie's done so much, and it's so funny.
Yeah.
I still love the Black Album cover.
Probably why it was so sad. None more black.
None more black.
None more black. I mean, how black can it be? Well, it's none more black, isn't it? this goes up, but see, this one is up to 10, but then it goes to 11. 11.
Well, why don't you make 10 the loudest number and just make that one louder?
Why don't you just make 10? Yeah, but this goes to 11.
The logic doesn't matter. It goes to 11.
No,
that's the best part. That's the bragging right.
And I think the reason it was, it's such a great film is that it identifies with, you know, with so much of what bands are about.
Well, the Stonehenge and Sabbath was kind of obvious for them. They thought that was hysterical. Because when they did Born Again, they had the giant Stonehenge. They did the measurements wrong.
Yeah.
Instead of inches, they did it in meters. So it was actually bigger than the actual Stonehenge. And then a year later, Spinal Tap comes out. They've got the little Stonehenge.
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 Great film. So I think there's a lot of very near truths in that. I think that the bands. I remember going back to a roadie's house and someone getting out the weed and someone getting the Jack Daniels in, and we just sat and watched it maybe 2 or 3 times in one night. You know?
Yeah,
we didn't.
I think that's one of the only times you could see the actress from The Nanny saying the F-bomb.
Yeah.
You know, man.
Good film.
So Prowler comes back together or starts recording again in the physical sense.
Yeah.
What happened? What brought that on? What are your plans beyond the second record?
Well, I think the first one was really because we wanted to put a lot of things right. You know, it felt like unfinished business.
Gotcha.
And there's a lot of there's a lot of blogs out there. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of articles that are wrong about the band. And then of course there's a lot of people say, well, you didn't record much. I said, well, we did record much. We just didn't put anything out on vinyl because that's just the way it was with us. You know, we'd rather not put anything out than put something shit out. You know, or something that wasn't going to last. You know.
Yeah.
So it kind of, the reason for doing the first album is really that, is to put a lot of things right that we thought was missing. You know.
Yeah.
That's really the reason for doing it.
And then you just
some of the tracks which were supposed to have been released that never got released.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
Now we're able to do that, you know. So
yeah, that's good. And obviously, you had trouble with different bands of the same name from around the same time.
No, we never had a problem with it.
Oh yeah, that's right. But others.
The only one we had a problem with was Iron Maiden. We sorted that out in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that didn't take any trouble.
No. In fact, Steve actually mentions this in one of the videos. So, no, there was another band I know formed around 81 or 82, maybe.
Yeah, there's a demo from 84 from a band called Prowler that isn't you guys, but it's on YouTube.
No, there was one band I know from Leicestershire.
I think that's the one. Yeah,
probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
We never heard of them. We never at the time. We never heard of them.
And obviously, they didn't do enough, or there would be a problem.
No, and I'm sure when they formed, they were in their their particular world there, and they hadn't looked around to see if there was another Prowler out. Otherwise, they wouldn't have called themselves Prowler, you know.
Yeah, same thing happened with Rothschild America and Rothschild UK. But Rothschild UK was first. So,
yeah, I mean, we had a discussion with our record company, with Jess, and basically, you know, we talked about that, but it wasn't an issue. It really wasn't an issue, you know.
But it's something you had to make sure wasn't an issue starting.
Yeah, you talk about it. Yeah. But we recorded as Prowler from that time. What else can we do?
It's all you know. It's your baby, man.
That's what we were. It was our baby, yeah. So they're a good band. I've heard a couple of the tracks on YouTube, and it's a typical, you know, heavy metal band, and they're good musicians. And I think there was another band after that as well. I think there was another, and then there was another one in the States, I think. But
I'll have to look into this just out of my pure curiosity.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter to us. We were the first, and that's all that matters.
Absolutely. I mean, I've listened to the single enough times. I heard the B-side on Brute Force growing up. You know, you guys are really good. I'm glad to see you back in action. When can we expect the albums to be released or available? Are they going to be digital only, or are you going to do physical?
We've all the artwork is designed for the CD. We've talked about doing it a vinyl edition as well. Depends on a few things, but
no chance of cassette tape then? The super limited thing that people do nowadays.
Yeah, well, I think this cassette tape thing, we could probably do that ourselves. You know, I don't think a record company's going to do that. You know?
There's a few places in the States that make cassette tapes, and the bands will put out a limited quantity of like 50 or so.
Okay.
You know, special edition.
Yeah.
That's an option. I didn't know if you knew that, but it's a niche market that started to come back.
There was a time when that's all we used to do, cassettes for the gigs, you know, to sell to people. We used to sell quite a lot of them.
Well, for me, I bought Brave New World by Maiden brand new in the shop on cassette for $5 when they were phasing out. So cassettes were a big part of my life. Kiss Alive 3 was the first piece of music I ever owned on cassette. So they've kind of sort of come back, not quite like
mine. In the UK, when we were in the car, because every car had a cassette player.
Yeah.
And in your little in the little well next to the gear stick, you used to have a pencil.
To wind it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to sell the cassette. If we do it, we'll do a special celebration pack.
Yeah.
We'll do the cassette and we'll do a pencil with it.
Nice.
Yeah.
The Prowler logo on the pencil.
Prowler logo on the pencil, yeah.
That would be fucking cool. Yeah, I don't know if you knew that, but it's been a little niche market, and I've bought brand new cassette tapes. A lot more underground stuff, like, you know, I guess bands more up your alley. A lot of doom stuff comes out on cassette, a lot of modern psychedelic stuff, you know. A lot of the Seattle stuff from the late 80s, early 90s, Sub Pop is starting to put cassettes out again. So that's an option. But that's cool that you're doing the vinyl too. I love the big art and being able to sit
I'm
there.
a vinyl. I'm a child of the vinyl days.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up with
I
that.
wasn't, but I've got a rack full of vinyl. I love it.
Yeah, it was.
You know,
there was just something about expecting the next album from your favorite band to come. You know, I remember going and buying Machine Head for the very first time.
Yeah.
And so many albums, you know. And there was something about the album because it had the photographs, it had the cover artwork, it had
the gatefold, the sleeve.
Yeah, and it was an event, you know.
Yeah, and I'm sorry,
a download is so impersonal.
Yeah, you don't own anything. You really don't own anything. For me, I find there's something almost sexual and ritual-like in putting the needle on the record. You know what I mean? It's just, there's something, you're less likely, it's like you could actually sit and do what it's supposed to do and take you into your own world through the music and really, you know, be at one with the music, where when you put on a record, you're less likely to, oh, I'm going to go wash my dishes now. Or, you know, you're going to actually sit and listen to it, which is how you're supposed to, in my opinion.
That's right, yeah. Well, there's one of the tracks on the album is called, I don't know if I should say this or not. Anyway, it's called, it's called Heavy Metal Hero. And it's part of the lyrics are about that, are about vinyl, about the album, and about what it, you know, its part in your life as a rock fan or a music fan or whatever. It was always important, you know, when vinyl went and CDs came in, it was you know.
Yeah.
But there it's now it's come back. It's made a bit of a comeback, which is great.
Oh yeah, I mean, we went from CDs to digital, and now everyone's like, well, wait, what the fuck? I don't own anything, you know?
Yeah.
It definitely feels more special. For me, I like holding the vinyl in my hands because it feels more real than the CD, you know what I mean? For some reason. It feels more authentic to me. I don't know. You know?
No, I agree. I totally agree. I remember I was in Berlin about 3-4 years ago, and I had some spare time, and I went to a market. There was a lot of big markets in Berlin, really cool markets. And I went to this one that was quite nearby, and it had this music stall, which must have been 100 yards long. It was a single music stall, and it was all vinyl, and it was all heavy metal.
Beautiful.
And rock. This was the kind of place you just spend standing there, looking through it, talking and everything. Of course, I'm there. And I go to the first rack and I pull a few, and there's Brute Force, and I take it out. And I'm still looking at this thing, and the guy comes over from who owned the thing. There was 3 guys there.
Yeah.
And he come up and he spoke very good English, you know, and he said, "Oh, this is good album, this good album."
Yeah.
And I said, I know it is. And I said, you know why I know? He said, no. And I turned it around and I went, see this guy here? In this band,
that's
Prowler?
me.
That's me, you know. Oh, wow, can you sign?
Yeah, that would be me. If I hadn't met you beforehand, that would have been me.
He had 2 albums, he had 2 copies of it there.
Nice.
And he got me to sign them and took them. He said, no, I'm having this one. And the other guy, one of the other guys bought one.
Yeah. That's totally me.
There's something about holding it in your hands, and when you looked over, I remember one of the earliest albums that I saw that really kind of had an effect on me was an album called Brothers and Sisters by the Allman Brothers, who were one of my absolutely favorite American bands. And I don't know if you know the album, but when you open it out, it's a gatefold. When you open it out, in the middle, there's all of them there.
Yeah.
You know, the Allman Brothers, their families, the kids, the wives, outside this place in somewhere down south. Yeah. And it is such a beautiful photograph. Such a beautiful vocal, and it's a great album because it's got Rambling Man on it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
got Jessica on it, and it's got all that stuff. And that's the album that really got me turned on to slide playing. I'm a big fan of slide guitar.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, so
the Allmans are perfect for that. Rest in peace, Dwayne.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Dwayne Allman, man. Yeah. So we've got
the way I describe them to people who aren't sure about them, I'm like, they're kind of like a Southern rock Grateful Dead.
Yeah, again, if someone said, what are they like? I'd say, well, listen to it and make your own mind up.
Yeah. Well, you know, when people ask me that, they're looking for an easy answer.
Yeah. So on the first album, we've got some slide guitar from Martin on there as well.
Awesome.
On a track, I won't say anymore, but yeah, there's a few surprises on there, but it's more of the same from Prowler. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, you're in Dubai right now. Any chances of a tour in the near future on the back of these?
Yeah. We've spoken to the record company. We've spoken to a few people, and if it permits us to do it, yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, we'd love to. You know, if there's a promoter somewhere in the States, or if there's a promoter in Europe we can look up with, then we're in the frame of mind. We'd love to take the old music and the new music out and put together it would be a pretty kicking show, I can tell you. So.
Oh yeah, and I'd love to see it. So that's why I'm hoping you can get a hold of someone a little bit higher up on the chain than I.
Yeah. Well, it's just a matter of, you know, it's really a case of networking and finding out. And
you know what I've always wondered, and maybe this leads me to a question that just popped in my head. If there was, like, you know how they did the Big Four tour of thrash metal, if they did something like that for the new wave of British heavy metal, you know, that kind of a tour, would you be willing to take part in something like that? Has that ever been discussed?
Absolutely. I tell you what, you could refine it down even more, and you could do a Brute Force tour.
Yeah.
Now, if you look on Brute Force, if you look on who's on that album, you've got two members of Ian Gillan's band. You've got Fist. You've got Raven.
Yep. Oh yeah.
You've got White Spirit. You've got Diamond Head.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah, you'd have the
there's your lineup. There's your lineup. And get Prowler in there, and you know, that's what you should do. I think a new wave of British heavy metal tour. Yeah, great idea. But I mean,
go one step further, make it a big thing. Has that ever been discussed? Has that ever been a thing that anybody's ever brought up, or? Not
that I know of. I think the basic, I don't know whether record companies have got some say over what the bands do, you know, but
yeah,
for a series of concerts, a festival, it wouldn't be a problem, because I know that bands from different record companies play in festivals, so it doesn't really matter, you know.
And the nice thing is nowadays with the internet, all these people who like this style of music are now able to find your music so much easier than I even had to, you know, because if my dad didn't have the tape, I probably wouldn't have been able to hear about you until the internet kicked off, because, you know, he went over to Europe and brought home a tape, you know. He had an Aerosmith compilation tape that was really weird from the Rockin' a Hard Place era. It was like a greatest hits, stuff like they only put out in like Germany and places like that. Really odd stuff. Really cool to see though. Tom Hamilton had that like leather blue
bands are doing
jacket on.
The thing there I think people have to be careful about is that now all of a sudden bands are discovering these long lost tapes because they know that they'll be sold. I you know, all I know is that that it's the music is really all that matters in the end, you know.
I'm just saying a big package tour like that would go over really well here, I think.
Yeah, probably would do.
You know, especially over there too, probably more so than over here. For some reason, there is a disconnect to certain things in America.
Yeah, I think the biggest market for it, I think, is Europe still. I don't think it's the UK so much. I think it's Europe.
Yeah, Germany, I agree.
Yeah, Germany, Italy.
Well, they seem to appreciate it a lot more, you know, than like they appreciate different genres. Like there's so many gigs that happen over in Europe that I'm like, oh my God, I want to be there for that. But I'm on the wrong side of the world here, you know, and it's funny because
give it a year, it'll come back.
Yeah, I'm friends with a girl from Russia, and she was like, "You have like the best doom scene over there." I'm like, "No, we don't. No one gives a shit about it over here. It's over in Europe where
yeah,
they have like those big festivals. Like we have a doom scene, but it's not appreciated by the masses as much as it is over in Europe. It almost seems like Americans have a very picky commercial taste and always have, and that's what bothers me about my own.
I don't know. I think I think Americans are very protective of their own, their own music, which is understandable. I mean, but they've had so much great music in the past, I think there's a degree of it being quite insular along there, but when the bands come,
it's like if
I don't know any of those bands that have gone to America and haven't had a great time,
Yeah, at the same time, I mean, there is a hardcore group like me, but we're scattered in all these weird places and have to meet up in these small, intimate places. But over in Europe, there's like thousands of people into the music, where over here it might be
but
hundreds.
there's a lot of venues, and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The gigs I really liked were the clubs, the small, where you were like there to the audience. I love that. Love that.
I've seen so many punk shows like that.
You can bludgeon them into, the
intimacy,
Whereas a big stage is a big stage. It gets boring after a while.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to
with big stages. I think it's an ego thing. I think you always get the band does the big shot with the big audience, which is great. But I think for the feedback, you can't be a Ruskin Arms type gig, or
no.
It was just really in your face.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very different.
Even Bruce Dickinson has said, I think, when you're playing to a large hall, you have to inflate your ego and your persona to supersize to reach the back. So it's actually a challenge at the same time. So, that makes sense. Where if you're just, right there, it's packed and it's electric, you don't have to worry about the music will do it, because everybody's ready to see you, packed in like sardines. The electricity in the air in smaller gigs seems to feed the band better than on a big stage.
It's an amazing feeling. I always enjoy that more.
That's why I love going to punk gigs even now, because they're such small, intimate things. Like seeing the Addicts, they're one of the UK's longest running punk bands with the original lineup too. They have like a Clockwork Orange theatrical type thing, sort of. And it's really fun. Like the singer Monkey has this umbrella that he opens, and it's got these blinding lights that blink and streamers fall and confetti. It's kind of like a punk rock circus type of vibe, He's got little props and stuff.
The hat will fit.
He wears a roller derby hat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I just love seeing bands in small venues like that, where I caught one of the singer's gloves. Because he wears these white gloves like a clown, sort of, with the Clockwork Orange style makeup type thing. So, give it that kind of vibe and that kind of fun in a small packed house with a bunch of boozed out punkers. Great time, that's rock and roll. The sweat's pouring off the walls, There's no pretensions or anything. It was great.
No.
So,
I know what you mean.
I guess in closing and wrapping up, this is something I personally ask all of our guests, and I get different answers every time. There's no right or wrong. What do you, at the end of the day, what do you love about music?
What do I
love about music?
Oh man, it's simple. It's the communication. It's building that link with someone else.
Without knowing.
I mean, it's done through your music.
Yeah.
Which and it's an extension of you, but it's a connection that it's a strong one. It's always a strong one. I'm still on Facebook. I'm still talking to people that used to come and see us in 1975, 76.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that will only happen if you have that, if you've got that strong link from that time.
Yeah.
You know, and that's it. That's it. It's all the rest of it is superfluous. All the rest of it is smoke and mirrors. It's the connecting with the girl or the guy in the front row or the middle row or the back row. What will come up afterwards and say, "Oh man, can you sign that? I love your music."
Yeah,
I love your music because that's you. It's a part of you. You know.
Yeah.
When you write a song, that's a part of your life there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a living piece of art. It's a living, breathing thing. It's not like a picture painted on a wall that's still. It's a living, moving entity.
I mean,
it's almost spiritual. I hate to make it corny like that, but real rock and roll and everything to me has always been very spiritual in a way.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, but
a cosmic type thing going
songs,
on.
but yeah, I mean, I think about songs as like my children.
Yeah,
they're my children. I created them.
Absolutely.
And then I set them loose on the world, and I watch them take this journey, you know, and it fascinates the life out of me. You know,
I'm sure it fascinates you to be talking to someone half your age across the pond.
Well, yeah. But the other day I was talking to a guy in Tokyo, and then I was talking to a guy in South America, and then I'm talking to a guy in, and it's about music, and it's about that, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's what
connects us.
Yeah, it's what started it for me in the very early days, and it still does it for me now in the twilight years, you know. So
nice, the twilight years. The Twilight Zone. Still waiting for Rod Serling to come out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And I'd just like to say I absolutely love your music. When it is available for physical purchase, I will purchase one. Sign it for me if you will.
That's a given, man. Don't worry. Yeah, I really appreciate it, and thanks for asking me to come on in and bore the life. I hope
you had a good time, because I did. I learned
I loved it, man. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd love to have you on here again, maybe as the albums come out, just for a promo.
Yeah, when the album, we'll have a chat then. Yeah, but yeah, thanks. I really appreciate it, and anyone listening or anyone watching this, anyone connected with what you do a great job. And give you all the support, because you know we all need that in one form or another when we do what we do.
One hand washes the other.
Yeah,
you know? That's how I always look at it. So all right, and if you like what the Crash and Thunders channel is bringing you, interviews with Prowler, you know, reaction videos, all that other stuff, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, leave a comment for Trev. I'm sure he'll be around, poking around, seeing the reactions.
That'd be great. Yeah.
This has been another episode of Crash and Thunders, and I'm your host, Thunders, and that's been Trevor Pattenden from Prowler. Thank you, mate.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Yeah, you too, man.
All righty.